welcome to the next edition on Absolute On Air. So today's topics around the concept of when the machine breaks down, pro tactics and tips for fixing your campaigns. I'll be your host today, Stephen McAllister. I'm Head of Business Intelligence here at Absolute Digital. And my co-host today, Edwina Lombardia, Senior PPC Manager at Absolute, will be guiding through all the tips and tricks for your campaigns. Joining us on today is Miguel, Natalia, and Tiffany within the PPC department. So Miguel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Miguel. I'm head of the paid media team here at Absolute.
And Tiffany?
Hi, I'm Tiffany. I'm a PPC account manager here at Absolute.
And Natalia.
Hello everyone, I'm Natalia and I'm Absolute PPC Senior Account Manager.
Perfect. So we've got the whole team on there. And Edwina, do you want to do a quick introduction about yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Edwina. I'm the latest addition to this wonderful team as a PPC Senior Account Manager.
Perfect. So we've got everyone on today. So first, what I wanted to dive into in the world of PPC is just setting the scene, setting the context. So you've got your campaign running, you've got everything set up, you've got your performances going well, and then things start just to fall off. The wheels start to break down, the machine starts to go backwards on itself, and you're seeing the results go downhill. So at first point, when this happens, what's our first point of call? Where do we go to on here? Now, I'm going to bring Tiffany in here, who's our tracking guru, because this is one of the areas we like to always think about as the first step to dive into on an account. So Tiffany, when things start to go wrong, especially in the world of tracking, what's your go-to? Where do you kind of lead into on campaigns?
Well, it's important to know that I think there are two types of tracking mistakes that can negatively affect a campaign. The first tracking is that it's just broken. I always say that you should always review your tracking at least every 6 months, because sometimes website developers make changes in the background and they might change a thank you page to a custom event, and then that can cause tracking to break. So it's a really good idea to make sure that you always review your tracking and make sure that it is correct. But the other common mistake that I find, which probably negatively impacts a campaign the most, is tracking the wrong things. As we know, we're being pushed into machine learning, and one of the biggest things about machine learning is it needs data to work properly. So tracking the wrong things could be not tracking something that's super important. For example, you've got 3 different forms, but you're only tracking one. Or it could be tracking something that you shouldn't be. I actually came across an account where they were tracking click to calls, and they had a problem with the website. I think they must have been having loads of bots come to their website, because they were getting on a monthly basis like 70 click to the phone numbers, but they were actually only getting like 10 phone calls. So obviously that was massively over reporting for Google, and it's taken a really long time to kind of fix the account now, because we had to go back into like a 6-month learning period where we had to reteach Google which conversions they should actually be going for, because they've been going for these click to calls, which isn't correct. So they're the 2 kind of main problems that I find with tracking that can have these problems.
So I think for me, it's very important to understand, and for the client and for any account manager, is tracking is not only attributing conversions to Google Ads, it also has to do with the delivery of the ads and of the optimization of the campaigns. So that's why it's very important to make sure all the tracking is working properly, and then, as Tiffany was saying, to track the most important things. Apart from that, and I think it was one of your second points, Steve, you also need to start guiding the machine to optimize for the conversion that needs the priority. Sometimes you can give some values, or there are some other ways that you can give priority to different conversions. So that's also something important that you should notice.
Okay. And just on that point, and giving priority to goals. So how would you do that, between, so your simple lead gen, you've got your click to calls, you've got your vanity metrics, you've got your form fills. How would you prioritize that? What would be a really nice way of saying, look, what's the most important one I want versus what's just a vanity one? What kind of tips could you do in the platform, or how could you do the setup so that you're pushing for more of your priority rather than treating all as equal?
So if we focus firstly on meta ads, for example, that's another platform that we use. You can give that priority with the aggregated event measurement. So then you can also start pushing those specific events in there. And then if we focus now on Google Ads, I think overall there are two ways. At the campaign level, you can tell the platform which is the most important campaign, the most important conversion point at that point. And you can try to optimize. You can also give specific values to different conversion points within the platform. Or let's say you can also start importing, let's say a lead gen client, you can import the quality of the conversions back into Google Ads, and then you can start giving priority to that type of conversion rather than just form submissions.
Yeah, so essentially you take it, so rather than it all being equal, you can say, well, this is my high priority, higher value, and then you flip it to almost a target ROAS approach rather than vanity clicks. So you're seeing that journey and what's good versus just, what's nice in the platform. But just following what Tiffany's on about in terms of, so you're tracking and review. We'll make a point on this one that even if it's working, is always do a test every once in a while, just to double check that what you've got reporting today is still correct for tomorrow, because, it helps just make sure you have that double, triple secured on your account, because at one time you forget is when things can start to break down. And on leading around changing and playing around with accounts, another area we look at where we see common things happen is when there's too many changes at once. Normally when someone takes over an account for the first time, or you panic and go into things. Miguel, you've got experience with this on accounts here. What happens when too many things happen at once? What's your general feeling on that? Is it good? Is it bad? What happens there?
Yeah, sometimes it's too easy just to go into over-optimize an account. So sometimes you just have to sit there for a bit, start collecting data, have a look at the changes, how do they impact different variables, and then start again optimizing progressively. If you start optimizing many times every day, then the machine is not learning. That then it's just resetting again the learning process every time, and even you cannot basically measure exactly the impact of each of the changes. So even if you think that that's the point that you need to sometimes overcook the food, I would say just wait down, step back, and start collecting and learning from your data.
Okay. So it's like more of a scientific approach rather than going at it with a machete and tearing everything down. It kind of seems a smarter way of doing it. And in terms of, let's say, analyzing, I'm going to move to world of analyzing rather than just looking at reactive there. So let's say your campaign, you're starting to see things deteriorate, or you're seeing performance up and down. Where should you go to in terms of seeing what's of value, kind of seeing where the wood and the trees are? And I'm going to bring in Natalia here now. You can help kind of digress into trends and how to segment your data.
So I think it is very useful when you're having issues with an account to kind of have like groups of elements that you're going to be looking at. Thankfully, with Google Ads, for example, it's very easy to have an account structure that you can just, identify problematic areas. So I think it's a case of, for example, going back to basics. In terms of identifying trends, you can always look at your keywords. For example, as I was saying, just go to the bottom level of the problem, see if you've got keywords that are spending, but they're not delivering conversions, or are they delivering the right conversions? Just if you can just get yourself together like a report where you can visualize these data, it helps a lot. That's how, for example, you're able to identify campaigns that might be performing, at the top level well, but then when you start diving into it, you can see that your cost per click could be, your cost per lead could be even lower, but it is not, because you have like these odd keyword that is spending, 70% of the budget. So just looking at groups of areas like that, start with your keywords, move on to your ad groups, and finally your campaigns. I think that's a nice way of doing it. I think then you can, once you've touched base with all the basic elements of a campaign, you can then start diving a bit deeper into trend data, like for example, hour of day, day of the week, and things like that do, users to have habits for search, depending on the industry, so you can identify those trends there. But I think that is like the second step. Once you've sort of come through the main elements of a campaign, then you can start looking into more specific, factors that could influence search and how your budget is spent and how those leads are conversing.
Okay, interesting. So you'd almost take a two-prong approach to it. One is taking the helicopter view, just taking a step back, taking it back to basics here. And then once you've assessed those basics, just the bare fundamentals that they're in place, your trends, then looking at the wider picture, the macro areas, the industry area, to see if it's just your account or actually is it something that's more prevalent across all the other competitors, so that it's not just you, it's actually market wide rather than something that's wrong with the platform. And then from there you can make your judgments on, how do I fix my campaign is gone? Was it seasonal? Was there another factor? Or was it something basic had just gone awry? Now, that's interesting on those sites there. So let's also look at, as I touched on just briefly about the wider picture within there, I'm going to bring Miguel back in on here, which is more like the journey. And we're going to stick on, say, the lead gen side here. So Miguel, when you've got campaigns and they're starting to fall off, how do you look at the journey? How do you line that all up?
Yeah, so I think I would like to divide this into one, let's say in the Google Ads perspective, that is more keyword focus, or it used to be more keyword focus. In this kind of activity, basically, what you would like to pay attention to is about the intent of that keyword. If it has a commercial intent, potentially that is the lower funnel, or if it's at the top of the funnel, that is someone that is just discovering the service, the product, or maybe in the mid funnel, that is actually someone that is now comparing and is researching more actively. So that's something that you will need to review. First of all, which is the intention of those users? Where do they fit in your strategy and in your landing pages? And then to see why they might not be converting. Something similar might be in, let's say, in paid social advertising, where you have, let's say, your prospecting audiences. People most probably right now at that point are not looking for you, but they are relevant for yourself. But what you have to try to understand is how you can bring them from the creative side into the website again, so they can start the journey, and then hopefully you can make strategies to bring them back afterwards, let's say through retargeting the tactics.
Okay, interesting. I think when we all think of lead generation, we're always at the very end of the funnel, i.e. the form, what's going wrong with the form, why aren't people filling in the form? But yeah, it's kind of nice to take that step back and kind of go stage to stage and think, well, I can look at the form, but then how are they doing on page, and then how are they doing in the platform, and then how are they doing up that funnel to engagement, rather than all just sticking in one bit. And then once you tie that all in, overall the account will just start to work better. It's interesting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring in my co-host Edwina, who's an expert on this one in terms of really working within the platform, kind of troubleshooting and looking at data. So Edwina, so you've got a campaign, it's starting to come off the rails there, it's starting to kind of slip a bit. What's your kind of go-to? What's your tactics for optimizing a campaign? Do you kind of go what we said earlier in terms of just tearing it all up, made loads of changes? Do you take the scientific model? Where is it that would you go to is when your campaigns are starting to fall off?
Yes, Tiff. So if I ever see something like that, I first scream. No, I'm kidding. My first reaction.
You can scream.
My first reaction is to look at in which campaign, what ad groups are we seeing the changes. And my first reflect is to go to the search queries and the search terms. I have to say, sometimes it has happened in the past where there is a external factor, and believe me, it was a song had come out and had a very similar terms at what we're targeting. Like, why are we spending so much money? Where is Why is it no conversions? Well, that was the issue, because we have to keep on top of negativation of the of terms that are not relevant to our campaigns. So one of the first things that I always recommend is to keep on top, have a very frequent search terms reviews, and that could be weekly, bi-weekly, depending on how much data you're getting into your account. Well, now actually there is a tool that Google has put in place within the inside sections of the account where you can see search categories. That could be a good stepping stone, I would say, to look into your account performance. Now then, if it's not something regarding clicks or like a jump of impressions, you might be, again, like my colleague said before, looking at conversion tracking, right? So there could have been something there, but if nothing is showing that has changed in terms of conversion tracking, then you might want to review your bidding strategies. Perhaps something has happened, and you might want to check that if you are utilizing automated bidding strategies, that there is nothing like a budget change that has reset the system. If you are using manual strategies, then you might be looking at, okay, is there an audience that changed? Any part of your demographic that has, for some reason, a change as well. So I would probably start with those two, like search queries and making sure that your bidding strategies are on top, basically, of your account.
Yeah, I think I'll just jump on that one there. That's one bit that's, I would say, underutilized in accounts is the audience, the who. Within the platform, you get the simple top-level demographics by age and by gender. So you can see which one's the outliers, if it's younger or older audiences coming in. But also, I say a lot of campaigns, they don't, use the audiences for observation to start to see which type of people are actually more likely to engage with my ads. And, if you put that in your campaign, you get visibility on actually who is it that's on my ads. And then you can almost play a game of whack-a-mole against those audiences that are spending or not converting. You can start excluding them out, because if they're spending today and not working, well, they're most likely going to spend tomorrow and not work. So I think it's a kind of general trend on here is that as we move into the world of automation, we feel like we're losing the control on the campaigns. And then when the campaign doesn't work for us, is how do we take back that control? So Edwina, just want to follow up on that point. How do you take back control on your account? How do you scream and cry? Do you throw the PC out the window? Do you just reset everything to manual? Do you take it scientifically, one at a time? How do you get your control back on a campaign?
Okay, so I do scream, but I'm not throwing away the laptop. It's not mine. But other than that, I must definitely say that the option that I have gone through most of the time and that have been working is going back to basics. So you have mentioned something very, very important there, Stephen, where you said that there are people who do not utilize the observation mode for the audiences, and they just go with whatever the results are and keep optimizing on that. They don't take into account the quality of lead sometimes. And sometimes you do have to reset the system, take a step back. So that could definitely mean going back to manual bidding. Of course, you only do this after a thorough investigation of, is Google Ads the only channel where you are seeing a dip? Because I know we're focusing on Google Ads, but it could be that the dip is site-wide. If it's also SEO, if it's also your other channels, make sure to have a broader view when you come to addressing your Google Ads issues. Why is that? It's mostly because when we look at Google Analytics data, you'd find that you also have some data on the demographics. If that doesn't match what you're seeing in your Google Ads, you might wonder where is the automated bidding taking its data from to optimize your account. So you might want to take a step back, revert to manual for one or two campaigns, the ones that have more issues, I would say, to start with, and see if the data that comes into the observation validate your approach and validates what the automated bidding was going for, basically. That's definitely one point I would do.
Okay. So there is a bit of controversial in terms of those topics there.
Definitely.
It's one on the radar, but I think the learnings from this is more, as you say, taking that step back, addressing, is it just one campaign? And if it is, it's my audience, and how can I rectify that? If it's site-wide, is it GA data, and how am I getting my data if it's correct? As Miguel was talking about, putting everything in harmony. If you can teach the machine to be in harmony from your lead to MQL to SQL, and the machine's working with you, then you support the machine by putting in as much automation and getting it working together in that harmony. But as you say, if there's a disconnect in the machine, first it's a case of finding that disconnect, putting that detective hat on, looking at rectifying it. And then if the machine's there, as you said, you could try these tactics of almost a machine reset to kind of give it a little nudge to say, look, come back at me with a fresh perspective and let's be friends again and start giving me my leads again rather than pushing in the wrong direction. Now, jumping onto the world of troubleshooting, I'm going to bring Tiffany back in here. Certain issues around, let's say you've got engagement, but no one's coming in, or you get lots of traffic, but they're all just bouncing off. So, how do you manage your account on that one? Now, what's your kind of routines? So, Tiffany, on your accounts, what do you do to improve your performance of campaigns, CTRs or engagement? What's your go-to on an account?
Well, I think when it comes to this, it's become increasingly more difficult with the new way that keywords work now. One thing that I've noticed is I find it a lot harder to get a good good ad relevancy now, because it used to be obviously you'd have exact match, and then the keywords come through and you can make sure, like, I don't know, mowing your gardens, for example, only came through mowing your garden keyword. But now we've got all these different variants and that sort of stuff. It comes a bit harder because your keyword will now match up to other stuff. So you will have other keywords coming through that sort of keyword. So one of the things that I do, which I think has kind of helped CTR, is it's a bit harder now because we can't really do the negatives and stuff like that. But sometimes what I do is if I make sure that keyword is set up on the account, I have noticed that the search terms start going through that keyword. So one thing that I do is I make sure that all keywords that are relevant, that have a like a high impressions and high clicks, are now add to the account. So that's one thing that's definitely helped. Make sure that your ad copy is relevant. Ad copy is really, really important. Make sure you're using all the different the ad extensions that you can do. In terms of the kind of bounce rates, if you're having a high bounce rate, it means that the page that you're landing on isn't relevant to the keyword. So either you need to review your search terms and make sure that the search terms coming through are correct, or test other pages on the website and see if that works better. You can carry out A/B tests. One thing that I've done before is I've kind of actually just sent people straight to the contact page for lead gen, and that's actually worked quite nicely. And then the other thing you can do is have a look at conversion rate optimization. I think conversion rate optimization is becoming more and more important in this day and age, because we're no longer able to have that much control over people who come to your website. But what we can do is we can try and control what people do on your website. So they're kind of my top tips when it comes to increasing the CTR and reducing the bounce rates.
So, Tiffany, on that one then, so we do have high bounce rate on very specific PPC landing page as well, which should be normal because we are basically sending them to that one page to convert. How would you then deal with troubleshooting on these cases?
That's a very interesting question.
I'm going to hijack on this one here. So this is where other tools can come in handy, come into play, because you've got GA, and GA, one of the metrics you'll have there is your average time on page. Now, your page there, PPC, is going to bounce straight away if they're not going to convert, but you can look at how many seconds they're actually on page there. If it's only a couple of seconds, then you know there's a big disconnect. If they're taking the time to read that page, then you know that it's engaging, but there's just something that's there. Then you can deploy, third-party tools, to do heat maps and recordings to engage on that site there. So you're looking at it from different metrics rather than one solid metric, i.e. bounce rate. You can now look at engagement on time, or you can actually look into the data in terms of scroll rate as another metric. How far do they scroll down the page? Clicks on page, are they watching a video? All those soft little metrics which will tell you the story about that page. And then you can link that back to, are they actually using the page? Yes, no. Well, if they are, well, then we're getting there, but there's just something that's missing. Or is it just that it's 1 second, no one's scrolling below the fold, nothing's going on? Well, then there's your disconnect.
Okay, that makes total sense, Steve. Thank you for that. But do you say that's the same thing in terms of like service product, or do you have a different approach when it comes to e-commerce?
Yeah, I would say it's a different one. So your service one is, if we take a step back to what Tiff was on about in terms of your, CTRs and whatnot, is making sure that the ad to landing page, the message is on point, that it resonates, and it's the same thing. Let's say I have an ad that says claim a free prize. You land on the page and it says, no, you've got to pay to get something. Well, it's a mixed messaging, so of course you're going to bounce off because you haven't told the story. Ecom, it's the same that says, Black Friday, buy this item now, and you come to it and you find actually it's out of stock or on a long lead time, or that clothing, that particular size is no longer available. So now it's a complete disconnect, and it's really thrown me off because it's not going to convert for me. And in the ecom world, it's those kind of things until that we look at beyond the platform that helps us with the conversion. In the platform, in terms of that control, what we can do, and it kind of touching on what Tiffany was also saying about looking at this queries and what's coming in, is making sure that that query is used in my product, used in my title, used in my description. So rewriting your product to match what Google says, basically putting the keywords into my title and my description, putting that harmony in, rather than just setting the default that's on my website. Because if I can get that harmony, I'm more likely to get it working. And if I don't have that, I've got no control. And when things start to break down, I've got no levers to pull and to work on my campaigns.
Okay, and that could be because obviously the feed.
Miguel?
Sorry.
Miguel?
Yeah, I think another thing that we need to consider is not longer very keyword oriented, the platform, if we focus on Google Ads. So now with Performance Max campaigns, it's just about feeding the right audiences. So potentially, if for e-commerce websites, if you see everyone just bouncing and not engaging at all, that might be also a signal that maybe the audience's signals that you're giving are not as relevant as you would like. So that will be another thing that you might need to consider refining the audiences.
Yeah, it's a full layered approach, and especially in the world of PMAX, which we'll cover off in a few minutes' time. And there, it's not just one thing, it's everything. And then Google have this habit of putting smoke and mirrors behind so you don't get the full picture. But we do have some controls and levers that we can work through. But yeah, there is differences, lead gen and e-com, but it is that detective hat solution and trying to find those controls, especially when things starts to fall down. What would be great though, in terms of leveraging controls and looking at your audiences a bit more, is again another where we kind of don't really touch on too much, is around remarketing and using that data. So Tiff, I'm going to bring you back in. If you can help me kind of guide through your approach within remarketing, within audiences, how do you use that for campaigns? How do you move from being static to storytelling?
Well, I think what you need to do is you need to think about your audiences. You've got your prospecting audience, you've got your remarketing audience. Now, for those of you that are not sure what we mean by that, is remarketing audiences is when you're targeting people that have engaged with your website or previously engaged with your ads. And prospecting is when you're looking at new people. Now, within those audiences, you've got to picture the kind of sales funnel. Now, in the sales funnel, you've got your awareness stage, your consideration stage, and your purchase stage. And it's really important to kind of split it into the three, because that's how you want to tell the story. So you've got your first stage and you've got your awareness stage. Now, what we mean about the awareness stage is people have no knowledge of you, no knowledge of what you do. Right. And this is where I think people really don't use that properly, because when you're at the awareness stage, what you want to do is you want people to get involved with you. If you're like a charity, for example, this is the kind of stage where you want to tug on people's heartstrings. You know, this is where if you do something really good with your business, like say, for example, you know, like how sometimes, you know, like Huggies will do a promotion where they're like, oh, you buy a certain amount of nappies and then we'll donate this much per nappy to like some kind of cause. You know, if you do stuff like that, this is where you want to kind of send that message out, because this is where you're kind of saying to people, you know, this is why you want to come to us, this is why you should care about our product. Or if it's just like a product, for example, you know, you want to list out people's pain points, you want to be like, you know, this is how our product can help you. Is that kind of awareness stage. You know, if you're in a very niche place where people aren't really aware of you, this is where you want to drum up interest into your product and your business. So this is where you kind of want to go super broad. This is where you want to look at interests, and this is mainly like the interest stage, because you know you're looking at people who don't know who you are, don't know what your product is, and you really kind of want to drum up that interest. And then you kind of go into like the consideration stage. And your consideration stage would be like lookalike audiences or similar audiences, you know, all those sort of things. So they're people, the audiences that are based on people who are like people that have engaged with you. Also, you might want to look at the more broader engaged audiences. So, for example, you might want to look at people who have maybe engaged with your Facebook ad, for example. I'm going to use Meta because it's just a lot easier to kind of use Meta as an example, because they have a lot bigger audiences. So they're the kind of consideration stage. They're where people are going to be more interested in your product. And then you've got your retargeting stage right at the end. And this is where you kind of want to get people in for the sale. So you kind of drummed up the interest. You're using the message of this is what you want to do with us. And then in the next stage of the story from consideration, this is why like we're going to just to remind you, this is why you want to look at our product. This is what we can do for you. And then you kind of got your retargeting stage. And this is where you want to use more kind of like urgent messaging. So this is where you want to use stuff like limited time now, or don't miss out, all those kind of urgency messaging, just to get people into that final stage to convert. Now you can use this on Google as well, just as the same sort of thing, again, just by splitting your audiences into whether they should be awareness, consideration and retargeting, and then just kind of refining your message depending on where in that funnel that people sit.
Tiffany, I just wanted to throw a bit of a spanner in the works. And, you know, we're saying goodbye to similar audiences very soon. I think similar audiences, I must have been like maybe the one person that was sad that they were going, because I've got a few clients that work in the health industry, and for example they cannot do retargeting. So similar audiences was a very good way of capturing people, you know, with same interests, same user behaviors, etc. So how do you leverage, for example, the lack of retargeting options for industries like healthcare, where, you know, that's not an option? How do you capture that, you know, the user when they're ready to convert? You know, we would say for other accounts and industries is in the retargeting stage, but how do you do that when that is not a possibility?
That's a very interesting point. This is why looking at other platforms probably would actually help you. I mean, when people get to your website, that's like a cross thing. If someone goes to your website from Google, that's not just information for Google, that's information for everyone. So sometimes what I do for certain clients is, if they do have the option to do stuff like Meta, is I might send people to the website in Google, but then only use Meta on a small budget, and just do retargeting. So what it might be is that you might want to look at maybe using other channels just for retargeting. I'd like to give you a better answer than that. Unfortunately, I have the same problem as you, Natalia. I have clients that just absolutely cannot do retargeting on Google because of the healthcare, or what's it called, the policy that is personal advertising in healthcare. Unfortunately, there's no way around to get that on Google, so you just have to look at other channels.
So you're essentially using other channels as your fact-finding mission to give you the audiences you have. From that data, you can look at what the audience categories are to try and build out a bit of who, but you're limited by the remarketing side. So at least you've got some control. You can see who's there. In other platforms, you could look at within Microsoft Ads in terms of some of their audience metrics to get you a bit more targeting. But I think because it's in that particular industry, because it's going and it's an industry-wide thing that's going, everyone's going to be in the same boat in terms of it. So it's not one person's being left out in the cold and someone's going to capitalize on it. It's now got to be changing the marketing, changing the message, changing the engagement. Now, another way you could look at it is potentially try and get like first-party data, get people to do soft opt-ins, building out lists so you can get to know who they are, and then using cross-channel approaches with that. So within social, within things like email marketing. So trying to, if you're restricted in one platform and they're taking the toolkits away on that platform, then branch out to use a kind of more omni-channel approach. That way, you're putting more tools back into the kit rather than shielding away, and you're just changing the perspective. So maybe Google then moves from lower funnel to being more prospecting, and your other channels can then supplement that with more remarketing side. So it's kind of a back and forth approach you can apply with. Another thing I wanted to touch on quickly is around the world of dynamic remarketing and retargeting. So Miguel, I know you've got some experience within this world. Do you want to touch on a bit of this?
Just very quickly before we start with dynamic, I don't want to be miss some things about remarketing. Sometimes what I have noticed is that advertisers tend to forget to tailor their message based on the retargeting audiences. Retargeting is a very good placement just to put some FOMO, some urgency. You know that someone has been your website that has shown certain interest, so that's the time to push that urgency within your ad copy from the to start with, in order to bring them back and make them convert. So I think that the messaging is very important to tailor based on this kind of audiences. And then trying to go back into the dynamic retargeting. So if we continue from the meta ads side, I think that's something I will really suggest for all these e-commerce websites. Doing dynamic retargeting will be showing users the products that actually people are browsing or that they have added to the basket. So that's very powerful because all the ads will be automated based on that user behavior of the user. If we move to Google Ads, it's very similar within the shopping performance max perspective. So you can, if you start tagging when people sees a product, when people add to the basket, when they are in the certain levels or phases of the checkout process, also that's important. So then you can bring them back and then try to finalize that sale. It is interesting, but I haven't seen a lot of accounts doing this. But even you can do the dynamic retargeting based on services. So if you're a website that offers 5 or more services, you can also tag those specific services and show ads based on that, on which type of the service has the user seen in the website. So normally dynamic retargeting, we tend to focus a lot of e-commerce, but sometimes there's something you can do about in this lead gen area. So that's something I will definitely also suggest to explore.
Yeah, it's a big one within the platform around accommodation, travel, hotels, bookings, that you can apply that. So then you can have not just the lead, but also the location and a recommendation of someone that you're showing to them, so you can be super specific with your recommendations. But yeah, it's an area that's kind of underutilized, but if you think of it, this is your most engaged, warm person that you could try and touch on. And if you can get them with the right ad, which actually resonates to what they're after, they're going to convert. If you just show them saying it's static and generic, well, they know who you are, so they've had that ad fatigue and it's not exciting them. But if you can make it more personalized to what they're actually after, almost like the Amazon effect in terms of giving you those recommendations in front of you, yeah, this is a powerful tool. And you touched on briefly a couple of times around the world of PMAX. I just want to talk around emerging trends within PPC And especially when campaigns are coming off the rails or new ideas coming in to help give you those tools, give you that leverage. So I'm going to throw this into everyone into the ring in terms of your ideas and what's coming in. So the one that's the big hot ticket at the moment, I'll come on to PMax in a minute, but it's the one that's in the last few weeks that everyone's been jumping on. It's the world of ChatGPT. So Miguel, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so it looks like it has came to revolutionize not only the digital industry, but also any type of industry or sector that you can use it. It's a very powerful tool. We have been trying to, or we've been testing it now for some months and trying to see the capabilities. I think as a PPC manager, I'm very excited for this because it's in the similar way that we use machine learning from Google or from Meta Ads or from other platforms. You know that the more context you give to the tool, it will understand better and it will be giving you better outputs of whatever you're asking. So it's like training the system to try to give you the specific output that you're looking for. So I would not suggest just use the tool and then copy paste and with your own things, but it's definitely a very powerful thing that you can use. Nowadays, Steve, as you know, now the GPT-4 technology is out there, so it can even create images. Artificial intelligence can create images. So again, that's something it can be explored further. But if I try to narrow it down just for Google Ads, there are some things that we have been using it and we have found it very useful. One of all is create ad copy, generate emotion with your ad copy for every platform, for your landing pages also, even for your forms. Sometimes people forget about the power of the forms, of having a nice title and nice description to make people excited to submit. So everything that goes around creating copy. We have some suggestions, but it hasn't. I will still. I would not trust it 100%. So it can suggest you some keyword volumes. They are not accurate at all, but it can start doing that now. It can give you maybe competitive terms for some areas, some even long tail keywords potentially. Again, this is something you have to double check and verify with other tools just to make sure you're going into the right direction, because sometimes this platform will not have accurate information around this, but it can definitely suggest you some keywords sometimes. Sorry, Steve, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to, another way of using, I used this tool recently, is we typically think of it as a fact-finding mission. I ask a question and it gives me new information like keywords, terms, and volume. Something else you can actually do with these tools is you can push all your analytics, your ads data to the tool, the raw data, and ask it the question from the data, what do you recommend? I look at all my clicks, look at all my queries, look at all of this, just upload big files of data to it and ask it the brief. Show me what's in the platform, show me the results, and it will come back you'll be surprised, with insights. And it will tell you, from the data, because it's doing a simple mathematical calculation. It's just calculating the data. So it's your second pair of eyes. So you could do your own calculations. And then if you want to,
I would just like to, sorry, Steve, I would just like to mention, so the technology of GPT-3 is not like a calculation-based model. It's more like a language. It gives you sometimes, I have seen some even maths, some very basic maths that is not giving them accurately, but I think I agree with you that it can go that powerful. So now with the new GPT-4, actually it starts calculating much better. So it's something, if, as you're saying, if you start feeding the data, you can get some ideas from there, but always you need an expert behind to try to understand if those learnings or those insights that the machine is giving you are actually accurate or not.
Yeah, it's one of those caveats. It tells you that it doesn't know right or wrong, and it's going to give you something that it wants you to see, like, statistically that's there, rather than sometimes the correct response. So yeah, as you point out, you have to take ownership of it and be the final one to say, actually, I agree or disagree with its outcomes. But it's a tool, what we like to say is it gives you options to work with.
What I have also found is very useful for our multilingual clients, for our multilingual campaigns. So I speak different languages, and normally I try to verify it even with the tool, and actually it's accurate most of the times. So that's something, even languages I don't know that the translator is giving us, I like to verify if everything makes sense. So that's something also it can give you a very good understanding of this.
Yeah, years and years back, I tried that with Google and other free tools, and I could put the same sentence in, and then when I translated it across, it gave me 5 different responses. None of it was correct when the native speaker told me what actually it said. But yeah, these are now getting smarter, and it's actually linguistically getting there to the point that, yeah, you actually have that thing that's by your side that can actually help you, that really help work with campaigns. Other areas I want to look at, to kind of touch on. So within integrating data, so Tiff, again, on the world of tracking and in terms of data, bringing it all together, how's your feelings around, importing data, integrating it in, closing that loop?
Yeah, I think this is definitely like one of the biggest hot topics at the moment, because one thing that we're finding is there's a lot of leads that are coming through that are, generally not accurate, or they're coming from some of the click farm places, or even just salespeople. So obviously it's become, especially with kind of like the way that the search terms are coming, and it being hard, like we have less control over search terms now, we can't see all the search terms, and we kind of have that less control. So one of the best things that we can do is integrating leads. And basically what integrating leads does is it allows you to say to Google, you've given me all of these leads, but these leads aren't accurate. However, you've given me these leads and these leads are accurate. And, there's been a few times throughout this where we've been talking about all about the information that you give Google. And that's all it is really. It's just giving Google that extra bit of information so that they can make smarter choices. The algorithm can make smarter choices. Now, there are different ways that you can do this. You can kind of do it manually, which, to be honest, I wouldn't recommend because people don't have time for that, but you can do it manually by adding a Google Sheet, or there are different systems that can help you with it. You can use, so like Salesforce, for example, have a integration straight into Google, or you can do it using HubSpot. I know HubSpot has a way to do it, and you can also use certain systems that will help do it automatically, like Zapier and stuff like that. So there are a lot of third-party systems out there that can kind of help you do that. But I think it is just like really important, because it's just, like I said, giving Google that little bit more of information so that they can make better choices and give you more high-quality leads.
Yeah, it kind of wraps up what we're saying about not everything is all treated as equal, and if you can prioritize it and weed out the trash from the actual good stuff, then you should join it all together.
I was just going to say, I think this is where we're moving to now with all the automation that, Google is pushing to us account managers. I think it is quite fundamental at this stage being able to import leads, especially when it comes to B2B, companies. Qualifying leads and feeding the data back into Google Ads, I think is just like basic at this point. But I do find that, for example, it is something that can be done in Google Ads. Like, we have the tools that Tiffany was saying, there's thousands of third parties that can help you do these. But a challenge I found that is just like common denominator for a lot of accounts is that companies lack this process internally. So they won't have a way of qualifying their leads or gathering their data internally, so you can then feed that into Google Ads or, other platforms. So I think it's very important that before you start looking into, what can I do with my leads, how do I import them, is that you have a qualifying system in place and, a system where you can gather that data as well and store it, so you can then make use of it. Otherwise, you're just going to be able to optimize towards conversion volume. And it is the way it has been working until very recently. But again, with, with where we're going with Google towards automation is no longer something that we can rely on anymore.
Yeah. No, I get that. I've sometimes built the best after lead gen, the whole system that's there, but there was no connector for it, so it was just a waste of time, and you just getting in leads, and then other times you get leads in, you think, I'm doing great, and then the client comes up and is screaming at you that they've got no business, and you're like, I got you loads of leads, and they're like, no, you didn't, you just got me loads of garbage. And then when you go through it all and you talk it through, and then you get that eureka moment when you suddenly connect the dots together, and then you can actually build it so that actually you're seeing the journey, you're seeing it all through because it's connected. Without it, yeah, you're kind of hamstrung in terms of what you're there. And as we move into the world of more broad, more PMAX, more everything, where Google wants to take control and ownership, that's kind of a crucial stage there, is giving us back the control. So I know it's another topic that everyone needs to talk about is this. So Natalia, I want to start you off on your thoughts on PMAX and Google's insistence that we all just go super broad and forget our targeting and just let it do its magic.
Yeah, so PMAX is, again, one of the hot topics at the moment, released a very few months ago now, and PMAX can go catastrophically wrong. It's one of those that you need to feed as much quality data as possible into the machine so it can, take the good path, so to speak. I find like a lot of people have just jumped, on the bandwagon with these and just like try to test PMAX without having like the foundations for it. So I think one of the reasons why PMAX can go wrong, for example, is because you're not feeding it first party data. I think it's a fundamental again, and it comes back to you having an internal process by which, one, you can gather these data, for example, customer match lists are a very good way of feeding PMAX the right information about what users you want to target, because otherwise you have literally zero control. You need to use those customer match lists as audience signals for PMAX. If you're a small business or company and really your customer match list is not so big that you can use it in Google Ads, then you go on to audiences, like retargeting audiences that you can set up in GA for, and then feed that as your first party data. Then you can, depend on what the behavior of that user, for example, have they visited X page or for how long, like you can start segmenting your audiences a bit more so you can start feeding again the right information. You could have things like high intent audiences or audience that has spent like 30 minutes on site. Things like that is very important to feed into the Performance Max campaigns. And
I get it. So you're going to give them, as I say, more levers so that you're actually telling them more the who, rather than saying to Google, just send it to everyone and see what happens and just see what sticks.
Absolutely. I think otherwise you're just letting it run like a headless chicken, and it's not gonna do good for you at all. You're gonna have, and especially when it comes to B2B businesses, again, it's just like that's like the common theme. You get generally low quality leads. It can work very well for e-commerce because obviously we know the targeting is different and how PMAX uses the different placements. But when it comes to lead gen, and especially lead gen for B2B, your first party data is the first thing you need to, have in good shape. So yeah, and another thing then is broad, because obviously this is the way Google is taking, I'd say, production control away from the account manager. You still have the strategy behind it, but when it comes to, for example, optimizing elements at the account level, campaign level, etc., that's where Google is taking control away from you. So it's just like moving towards this common thing of have your first party data correctly, because then we're going to use it in combination with, one is Performance Max, for example, and the other one is Broad Match. So when you use customer match lists with Broad Match, it has a similar impact as similar audiences, for example, and that is a way of you telling Google, find me users that match this behavior. And that's how they use the automated and smart bidding strategies with your customer match list. So, you know, we're saying goodbye to similar audiences, but Google gives you other alternatives. But again, broad match pushes you further towards automation. Just make sure that the data you can feed into the machine is correct and it will do the job.
I suppose that one good thing that you have with Broad is that if you're using a search campaign, you do have access to, even though limited, but you do have access to some search queries. So that could give some type of control that you might not have exactly with a performance max campaign at the moment.
Yeah, it is a bit smoke and mirrors in that side there. Hopefully, eventually they'll give more control, but as with all new bits of the platform, it is, yeah, seeing how it runs. So Edwina, glad you're back on here. I just want to have a chat with you in terms of kind of the key learnings we've gone through on this, and from your observations in terms of like campaigns. So if you were to pick, say, two things that would be like your go-to for when the machine breaks down, and how would you fix it?
Oh, I believe we've talked so much about it that conversion tracking is the number one that I would pick there, Steve, with making sure that you have the right information, tracking the right conversions, aligning them frequently, checking them frequently as well. As Steve said, I think she mentioned every 6 months to make sure that you're still on top of what you're converting and what you're tracking, and feed that information back into the system, whether it's through the perfect conversion tracking system or as well with customer match list. I think that's definitely one of the most important ones, Steve. Second one, what have I second? I'm not sure. What would you say?
I would say, well, we've been touching this in the last few minutes, is on the audiences, the who. All often we think about the platform as in, you know, the ad and the keywords and the data, but we don't think enough about especially on the B2B side, that lead gen side, where you want to sift out from the trash to the good stuff, and that works with your conversions when you've got it there. But also your targeting is, you know, we talk about going more broad, more automated, but we want to give that control back. We want to have some sense of control, so we don't want to just let it do its thing. Otherwise, you will just get too many headless chickens in there, not enough good eggs coming in, and yeah, it just means having that audience control means you can just work with your campaigns, and then you can use that within the platform. Everything harmonizes, and then your ads and your keywords will start to work together because you've got the right targeting, which means your click-through rates is going to go up because you're hitting the right people, which means your engagement rates is going to go up, which means you're going to get more conversions because you're on that kind of same journey. And as you get more conversions, you can teach the machine to be smarter, and therefore you fix the machine. If you don't have that running, you're going to hit that situation where the machine's going to break down because it doesn't have the right input, because we're not giving it that control where I want to direct you to.
Yeah, that is correct. So yeah, making sure that you also keep on top of the lead quality, especially if you're lead gen, which is primordial.
Yeah. Anyone else got any final thoughts they want to add on to the pot today?
No, I think we covered most of the points.
Yeah, I think we covered quite a lot.
All right. Well, in that case, there, everyone, I want to say thank you all for your time, and for everyone listening today, thank you so much for listening to us go through some of the tactics we've got within the world of PPC. We'd recommend, if you want to learn more about digital marketing, upcoming trends within the world of digital space, to come to our channel on Absolute Digital. And thank you, everyone from the PPC team. I want to say have a great day, and look forward to chatting with you all and hearing your comments in the future.
Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye for now. Bye.